Welcome to the Total Health Podcast, brought to you by Total Health Nutrition Center of Menominee Falls and New Berlin, Wisconsin. Join Total Health founder Martin Johnson and his guests as they discuss some of the most prolific topics in natural health. Listen now as him and his guests talk about how to take back your health naturally.
Okay, I want to thank you for joining me with this podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about weight loss resistance. You might have struggled with losing weight and wondered why, despite your best efforts, you're not able to budge with losing weight. In other words, you just cannot lose a pound and that scale will not move. Well, we call this weight loss resistance. There's a clinical nutritionist that writes about this. J.J. Virgin talks about weight loss resistance as being defined as not being able to lose at least 1 to 3 pounds despite eating a very, very regimented diet and exercise. So there you have it. That's the definition of weight loss resistance. But what do we do about it? That's the key. In order to dive into that, we're going to look at maybe some mechanisms real quick of why this happens to begin with, because unless we understand why it's happening or what's going on in your body, then we really can't address the issue. There's a medical doctor, Dr. Albert J. Simmons, Simmons, I believe, that writes about different fats and how they are stored and mechanisms that disrupt fat burning capability. So in some of his manuscripts, he talks about actually defining different types of fats. The first one is structural fat, and this fills the gaps between various organs. It's kind of like a packing material that can keep your organs safe and keep them in place, like your kidneys, coronary arteries. It actually keeps the skin smooth and taut, this kind of fat, and provides the springy cushion basically under the bones of the feet and your buttocks area so that it doesn't hurt to walk. Otherwise, if you didn't have this cushion of this structural fat, we'd really have a lot of trouble with functioning. The second type of fat is what we call normal reserve fat or fuel. And this fat is actually, the body can draw from it nutritionally. In other words, it can draw energy and burn it very easily. Basically, the body can draw from it and use it as a very usable, sufficient energy source. And if the reserves are low in the body will go after this particular type of fat. In other words, if there's not enough caloric value coming in through the intestines, or how we absorb nutrients, the body will go after this fat as its energy source. Basically, when it comes to maintaining body temperature and just normal body function, the body is using this kind of fat as fuel to function and to fuel itself. The third type of fat is what we call abnormal fat. And this is fat that actually is potential reserve for fuel, but unlike the normal reserves, it's not as readily available for energy, to be burnt as energy. It's, so to speak, it's locked away in a fixed account, if you will, whereas the normal fat is in like a checking account. The body can burn it easily when it needs it, make a withdrawal, or it can make a deposit and store it. So when a weight loss resistant person tries to reduce weight by restricting calories and really almost starving themselves or eating a very low calorie diet even, or super strict diet, he will actually, when he's weight loss resistant and there's mechanisms going on that causes this, he will actually first lose normal fat reserves and structural fat reserves before losing this abnormal fat. And usually by time the person gets to the point where they're in this situation, by the time this person gets to the point where they're actually burning the abnormal fat, they're feeling weak and hungry and really just exhausted with eating that strict for that long of time, and might even be complaining of losing the wrong fat. That's why people in this situation complain of losing the wrong fat before they actually lose the fat that they want to. So these are the people that their face might look drawn out, but they're still have belly and hip and thigh fat that they haven't lost much at all. And so this abnormal fat will really be difficult to get off in the weight loss resistant situation. So what are some things that would cause this to happen? And we have to look at it overall. I mean, when we talk about working with people and balancing their body nutritionally through natural medicine, many times the first place that people want to consider, and not that it's wrong, would be, okay, the thyroid might be the reason why they're not losing weight. And it could be glands like the thyroid play a role in your metabolism, adrenal health, which plays a role indirectly in metabolism and blood sugar regulation, pituitary. These are organs in the system called the endocrine system that are very important to have balanced. But what Dr. Siemens has figured out is that these are generally in the weight loss resistant client that really has a hard time, losing any weight when they're strict. These are not the main focus. They're definitely important to balance, but one of the main glands that seems to start to go offline that can cause these things is called the hypothalamus, and that's in the base of the brain. It's really believed to be very much involved in the regulation of storing and burning fat, also regulating body temperature and many other things, of course. But much like that of like we talked about, that of a bank account, when the body assimilates from the intestinal tract nutrition more fuel than it needs in that moment, this surplus is deposited into an account similar to a checking account. So out of this account, it can always either draw, basically burn fat, or store it, just like a checking account. So when, for reasons which we'll discuss in just a moment here, the deposits grow more rapidly than you desire. In other words, a person's depositing fat stores more rapidly than burning them, almost like a fixed account, like a retirement account where it gets put in, but you can't take it out. That is pretty much what takes place when this hypothalamus dysregulation or dysfunction starts to take place. So just to put it in practical terms, we'll use that explanation. So when this hypothalamus starts to, what I say, dysregulates, or the function is not working like it exactly should, what could be the cause of this? Why would this hypothalamus get out of balance? Well, there's a couple of things that I'd like to mention. First, it could be over a period of time, high levels of chronic stress can play a role in causing this to dysregulate. You might have heard of the hormone called cortisol. Well, cortisol is a stress hormone, and the adrenal glands produce cortisol, but the hypothalamus has to respond to that cortisol and then work with it to get it down-regulated out of your body. So the hypothalamus plays a big role in this cortisol regulation and is affected by stress. Sudden hormonal shifts, such as menopause, can also be a major trigger to create an imbalance in the hypothalamus. So sometimes when you have much bigger hormonal shifts, especially in menopause, that can start to create this dysregulation, especially when you combine it with stress. And many times, as you probably know, a lot of women will struggle with this weight loss resistance as they're going through or after menopause. The other thing that can create dysregulation of the hypothalamus is extreme diet followed by binge eating. So people that might have had a history where they've done a lot of what you would call yo-yo dieting, where you maybe diet pretty extremely, but then you go back on eating or binge eating the wrong types of foods or sugary foods, refined carbohydrates. That can trigger this disruption as well. The other thing that could be a problem is trauma. So trauma can come in many ways. It can come in chronic or more acute stress, in other words, a sudden stressful event, maybe the death of a loved one, or trauma to the head. It doesn't have to be like a major head trauma, but it could be, a mild concussion or a whiplash from a car accident can sometimes cause the hypothalamus to dysregulate and start to not regulate the way the body burns fat the way it should. And then the last one that I would like to talk about is toxicity. So as we go through life, we're exposed to different toxins, maybe from the foods we eat or environment. And toxins, when they get in the body, chemicals, heavy metals, things like that, will typically get stored in the fat cells. So the body will push it into fat cells as a safe place to store it for the time being. It can also end up in the brain. It can end up affecting the hypothalamus. But toxins can create a lot of stress to the body. Dr. Joseph Bizzarno, he's an ND that writes about the effects of toxins on weight gain. So even outside of this hypothalamus disruption, toxins can cause or make it more difficult to lose weight. If you follow me on this, if the body has toxins tied up in the fat stores, when the body is looking to burn fat cells as its energy source, it's going to release a lot of toxins from those fat cells if there's toxins in them. So the body will be many times resistant to burn that fat, knowing that it doesn't, your body has this innate intelligence to go, hey, I'm not going to over toxify my system. So it'll tend to not go after burning fat because these toxins are locked up in it. And it's a mechanism that's almost like a self-preservation mechanism to prevent over-toxicity. So when we're working on detoxing the body properly to get these toxins out, it's super important that we handle different pathways. In other words, use the proper detox methods so the body can properly take these toxins from the fat stores and then get them out of the body in a safe manner so the body can basically lose that fat safely. So these mechanisms have to be considered when a person is more weight loss resistant or even just in general struggling with weight loss. So there's some of the reasons why this hypothalamic dysfunction can take place. Primarily the disruption or dysregulation of the hypothalamus can also contribute to other issues such as blood sugar or insulin resistance. So when the body is not regulating insulin properly, that becomes a further problem with the body wanting to store, especially middle body weight. And when the hypothalamus is off, it can create extreme hunger because some of the regulation of those mechanisms are in the hypothalamus. So then we have a double whammy. The body's not burning fat in the areas that you want to, and extreme hunger can be a bad combination. Dr. Mark Hyman, he's an MD that talks about insulin as a storage hormone. So if insulin's not being regulated properly, when it's elevated in the body by either eating too many refined foods like sugar, starchy grains, and carbohydrates, that can further make it more difficult to lose weight because the body will just want to keep storing it, especially in the midsection is where a lot of people will see that. When the hypothalamus becomes out of balance, a person will store this fat even in greater amounts in the areas, like I mentioned, in the the most difficult areas that people have a hard time losing, like the midsection. So these are major contributors to this weight loss resistance is the insulin regulation issues and the hypothalamus and all of the factors that tie into that. When it comes to working with people, really after 30 years of working with clients suffering with weight loss resistance or thyroid and other organ imbalances, we have found that there's no really one approach. There's not a cookie cutter approach to getting these things balanced out and working properly. We've worked with thousands of different patients, and we've found that really a multi-therapeutic approach is necessary to get these things back in balance. Determining, what do I mean by multi-therapeutic approach? Well, it's things like determining if toxin levels are in the body and to begin the proper detox protocols that's right for each person. So it can really vary from person to person depending on what toxins we're finding, or teaching a person how they as an individual need to eat to rebalance their body chemistry. It's a lot different than just, a cookie cutter diet, but balancing the body chemistry, what do I mean by that? Well, making sure the insulin is regulating, making sure the hypothalamus is not stressed through how you're eating, making sure that the endocrine system, like your adrenal glands and your thyroid, can be optimized through the way you're eating. These are all areas that we need to teach and really tailor to each person depending on what we find is going on. And really, if needed, as you can imagine, if needed, we need to specifically walk people through a therapeutic regimen on how to rebalance and reset that hypothalamus. And there are very specific clinical nutrition support and dietary processes to do that. We're not saying that everyone has a hypothalamic dysregulation, but if you are fitting that category, like J.J. Virgin talks about, like I mentioned earlier, where you're not losing almost any weight, like 1 or at least 1 to 3 pounds per week, and eating strictly and doing the things that you should do, then definitely this is a possible issue where we need to look at this hypothalamus. So it's a really critical area in dealing with this weight loss resistance. So it's really important to us that if you're looking to lose weight, if that's your main goal, that's great. Certainly happy to help people with that. But it's important to us that you also improve in other overall health areas, such as better energy, brain function, muscle tone, and even hair, skin, nail, and hair, skin, nail health, all of those things. It's not about just losing the fat, but it's about maintaining a healthier overall you while you're losing fat. That's what we're all about at Total Health, and that's what we've done, worked with people for the last 30 years doing. And if you're interested in getting that kind of help, by all means, give us a call. We're happy to talk with you as really just a no-charge conversation on the phone with one of our practitioners. In order to do that, you can call our number at 262-251-2929. Just simply schedule a no-charge consult with a practitioner to go over your scenario and see if we're the right fit for you. You can also go to our website at totalhealthinc.com and really just email us and let us know that, hey, you want to set up a conversation with a practitioner, and there's no pressure, no obligation, just simply to see if it's the right thing, if we might be able to help you, then we can take it from there. So I appreciate you spending some time with me. I hope this made some sense to you, and I hope it resonates with you to give you hope that, hey, if you're struggling and thinking there's no way you can lose weight, trust me, there is hope. If one of these issues is going on, creating that weight loss resistance, it can be worked on and can be corrected. You have a great day, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon on another podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Total Health Podcast. If you're ready to take the next steps in taking back your health, please give our office a call at 262-251-2929 to claim your no-charge 15-minute phone consult to see what next steps could be. Also, if you'd like further information, please see us online at www.totalhealthinc.com. Thanks for listening.